Well, welcome to the CSET May webinar. Today, Panos Prevedouros will be presenting break-even analysis of delivery service in rural areas with autonomous vehicles. And at this point, I will hand it over to Panos. Take it away.
Thank you, Vicky, and welcome to everybody who is with us today. We typically tape these things and they get more viewership as we store them on the web and people can watch them on their own time. So as part of the CSET series, my presentation today is a break-even analysis of delivery service in rural areas with autonomous vehicles. Unfortunately, I need to play it in this without projection because we have a little bit of a connectivity issue or software issue, but you should be able to see everything I have on the screen. This work was done in 2020 along with my graduate student, Abdullah Rahman Ahmadi, who since then finished his master's and he proceeds with his PhD at the University of Hawaii. So basically, we're talking about a study on the deploying automated delivery for household goods, such as, all kinds of household items, including food. Those types of deliveries are not a new thing. They exist in urban areas, they exist in the campuses, and they exist in gated communities and other specialized applications, but they are essentially completely absent from rural areas. In rural areas, automated delivery may actually be substantially more beneficial because of potential large savings in travel time, travel cost, and also traffic crash risk and safety-related issues, which are part of also the focus of CSET, traffic safety in rural areas. As well, I'll show you some more details. Rural areas have demographics that they are actually connected with the service that we want to provide. In other words, there are people who may have higher needs of this type of service and higher needs for savings. In order to work for this project, we had to find a realistic available vehicle, which is compact, inexpensive, and exists in an electric vehicle form. And so far, at least in 2020, there was only one, the Nissan NV-200 van. And we analyzed it in three modes: the regular mode, like a person-driven gasoline van, person-driven electric vehicle van, and connected autonomous vehicle, again with electric drive. So let's talk a little bit about the demographics of rural areas, where 20% of the population in the US lives in rural areas. This is something, of course, we know it has been decreasing over time. Rural areas have more residents of age 65 or older. As we see in the graph, actually, the trend is increasing. Part of the trend also may be urban retirees moving there. There has been a number of publications addressing that part. So there is maybe a renaissance for rural areas, more people moving out, particularly after the COVID pandemic. But the fact remains that there is a substantial difference between the proportion of old folks in urban areas and rural areas, and this is clearly reflected in the median age, 44 versus 37 for urban areas. Rural communities have more people with this, at least one disability, 15% versus 12% for urban areas. They also have substantial difference in the poverty rate, which again, if savings can be provided for them, would be more welcome. Transportation characteristics are also quite different. For example, you can see here in the urban areas, 10% of the households do not own a vehicle. That is much, much lower for rural areas because, of course, they are auto-dependent or vehicle-dependent, because, and here is covered in the slide, is because of the limited public transit. Clearly, trains, metro rail, and metro buses don't work in rural areas. They turn out to be tremendously expensive per vehicle mile. And other alternative modes, such as scooters, bicycles, mopeds. Again, because of the long distances, they're quite impractical. On the other hand, another important statistic is that rural areas have a very large number of fatalities, disproportionate, 2.1 times higher than rural areas. Remember in the previous slide, we said 20% of the residents of the United States are in rural areas, but rural areas are responsible for 46% of the traffic fatalities. A side statistic also is that based on traffic safety research, is that human error is typically attributable to 90% of the traffic crashes, which plays well to autonomous transportation of the future. Supposedly, those vehicles will be properly set to follow the traffic law, and of course, they will not be distracted, etc. So a lot of accidents attributable to failure of the operator, the human driver, may be absent when we have automated vehicles available. Of course, the one fundamental part of the analysis is the cost to use a car. And of course, all the typical parameters are listed here, the depreciation over time, finance cost, fuels. Now, this study was done in 2020. In the presentation, some of these are supposed to come in stages. Now, the slides, of course, you see them all in raw form in one shot. We have to deal with this technical glitch right now. So fuel prices have changed a lot. We're going to talk about this in a minute. And of course, you have additional costs as insurance, license and taxes, registration, of course, maintenance and repairs. The interesting thing is that a lot of things since we did the study changed in a very short time. In 2 years now, we have the trend of used vehicles nearly doubling in price. There is also a significant price increase for new vehicles. Fuel prices are at present approximately $2 more than the prices that we did our analysis in 2020. In addition, fuel prices, both fossil fuels and electricity, will likely increase in the future furthermore. One reason is because we need to pay to install more clean energy. And the second reason would be the enactment of carbon taxes, which will, of course, increase the price of fossil fuels. Now, let's talk a little bit about connected and autonomous vehicles. Some of you may be very familiar with them, some others less so. So connected autonomous vehicles are basically driverless vehicles using the public roadways. They work by essentially combining 4 major technologies. 3 of them are listed here: detection, navigation, and controls. Detection of the environment, navigation going from origin to destination, and controlling all the systems of the vehicle in order to do proper lane keeping, speed regulating, etc. The 4th technology, of course, is communication. And there are at least 3 different platforms that they do significant work for these vehicles to operate. One is vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure. This means, for example, that the vehicle is talking to the traffic signal controller, etc., and vehicle to everything else. One example of this is essentially the vehicle has an Uber type of application, so it knows where to pick up and drop off its passengers. Then one more slide about connected autonomous vehicles, or CAVs. It's been now fully accepted that the Society of Automotive Engineers came up with 5 levels, and these are the ones that they are now, for many years, have been accepted as the proper way of classifying these vehicles. They range from 0 to 5. There are, of course, several that they are in the early stages. The most typical is level 2, partial automation. These are the ones that we recognize as, you know, from the Tesla manufacturers and others, called quote unquote autopilot systems, which is actually a misnomer, but they have several advanced driver assistance systems. but they are not really fully autonomous. Autonomous, they come out in levels 4 and 5. In the level 4 with some limitations, which could be geographical and other conditions. And 5 is full automation, where essentially the vehicle might not even have steering wheel, pedals, or anything. It is just a vessel for transportation that does all the work. This may sound futuristic, but they actually do exist. There are applications of these vehicles as we speak in the suburbs of Phoenix, in San Francisco, and several other locations. They operate under what we call it geofenced protocol. In other words, in a very specific geographic area. But several of them are in what we could call revenue service. In other words, they do for a fee or for free transport passengers, real people today. So we're not talking about a concept that is way out there. We're talking a concept that is operating under specific protocols because it's not 100% fully developed and accepted yet. Going back to our delivery service, as we said, in urban areas and in the gated communities and in campuses, it does exist. And here in the sample we have, you can see pictures of such services. In the table we have, which is not particularly comprehensive, just examples of some names of companies that they operate, and they're partners with providers of big box stores that they take goods for distribution. So these things are real and existing at the present time, but not available in rural areas. One limitation of all the shown vehicles here is that all of them are somewhat miniaturized and they all operate at low speeds. Maximum speed typically is 25 miles an hour, and typically they operate at much lower speed. So this will not be appropriate for driving on a rural road, which are typically, traffic moves there at 40 to 60 miles an hour. And the size of the vehicles is normal. Now, of course, as we said, these cabs, the connected autonomous vehicles, do exist. But as we move into the future, there are still several deployment challenges, which can be classified in two ways, technical and non-technical. There are different ways of classifying these things. But examples here of technical is the difficulty of operating those on rural roads because of their alignment. They have a lot of curves. They have a vertical difference, so you have issues of side distance. No shoulders, passing zones. Imagine now an automated vehicle trying to pass a tractor trailer that is driving quite slow on a rural road. In addition, rural roads tend on the average have a poor condition of pavements and markings, which are used by these cab vehicles in order to safely navigate on the lanes. Of course, every time you have high tech, you have issues of reliability. Much better than average, but still there are hiccups with the hardware and the software and their reliability under a variety of conditions and over time. We have problems dealing with bad weather and odd surrounding conditions. An example of bad weather would be snow that covers the sensors. Odd surrounding conditions could be a not particularly well managed haphazard construction zone that really confuses the automated vehicle as to where it needs to go. Other surprising things that for common drivers are acceptable is an emergency vehicle driving on the wrong side of the street because it needs to get to the intersection to go where it needs to go. That would be very surprising for a connected autonomous vehicles under some circumstances. Then there are non-technical issues, such as, and this is ever present, the government regulations. These vehicles operate under special permits. It's not like that they're free to operate anywhere. So this already exists, and some areas welcome them with open arms, some areas quite opposite. There is a lot of politics and unions involved because of the tremendous potential of this technology to displace literally millions of taxi, bus, and truck drivers. So that's an area that actually well outside the realm of technology and engineering, but very much into reality, because these are real people with real jobs and issues of this nature. And then as a last challenge, well, it's perceptions. Perceptions rule the day. There was a AAA 2019 survey, pre-COVID survey, that 71% of the drivers were afraid to ride in a full self-driving vehicle. This one does not really affect our research project, because we're only transporting goods, not passengers. However, there is the other side of this, is that reluctant drivers or reluctant consumers, people who have ridden on a self-driving vehicle, that they had tremendous reservations before, they feel way better after they have done it. So there is the potential of this number to shrink as the technology becomes more ubiquitous in the future. In terms of methodology, throughout the introduction, I covered this part, which is essentially literature to find out the characteristics of rural areas, the characteristics of driving costs, characteristics of connected and autonomous vehicles and their challenges. So I'll be moving quickly through this. And the second part of the methodology is actually what we actually did in terms of analysis. So the analysis was done by selecting two case studies, two rural areas, one in Washington State and one in Hawaii. In order to really assess savings, you have to have a base. So your customer, your rural customer, drives a vehicle. So what type of vehicle would it be? First of all, we decided that it has to be a vehicle that it's approximately the middle age of the vehicles on the road. So the average age of the American cars are about 11 years of the fleet. So at that time in 2020, we decided to take the somewhat midpoint. So we selected the 2015 models. So typical forms of vehicles are the sedan, the pickup truck, and the electric vehicle. So in each of these three categories, we selected the best selling at that time, which in that case was the Toyota Camry, the Ford F-150, and the Nissan Leaf. So these vehicles form their basic expense. Depending on which one of these you have, then we can estimate a cost of getting household goods and groceries from a rural area, given characteristics of the cost of fuel, the distance, etc. And then for our delivery service, again, we had the Nissan NV-200, which is one version is a regular gasoline vehicle with a human driver, or one with an electric drive by a human driver. And the third one is a level 4 or 5 connected autonomous vehicles with electric drive. So based on this now, then the next stage is to start doing a detailed accounting of costs. So in both cases, since we're talking about deliveries, we're going to be needing drivers. So we came up with a detailed accounting of the driver costs. So if you want drivers, it's going to cost you in 2020 about $32 per hour. But autonomous vehicles do not have drivers. Instead, you will need a field autonomy engineer to supervise them. Typically, one engineer can supervise up to five or six of them simultaneously if they are out deployed. So if you have a deployment with several of them, of course, you will need to be hiring several supervising engineers. The cost for the engineer then is approximately $73. Then you have the vehicle cost to purchase. And there are assumptions here, as we see, with amortizing the cost over 60 months. The difference is that, again, there is the Nissan, which as a gasoline vehicle costs about $24,000, as an electric vehicle about $28,000, and as a connected autonomous vehicles is an electric vehicle plus a charge of about $22,500, which, based on the literature, that would be the sort of long-term upgrade to make the vehicle a level 4 or 5 connected autonomous vehicles. This number is not realistic at the present time. At the present time, this cost is closer to between $50,000 and $70,000 because all the applications are pilot applications. We're thinking about a time in the future where these things are fairly ubiquitous, and because of economies of scale, the cost has dropped to something substantially less than $50,000 to $70,000. Then there is a number of assumptions we need to make for evaluation purposes, such as the value of time for going to collect the groceries. And we basically estimated that time as the value of discretionary time, which based on the median household income. So we had median household income for the locations we analyzed. And it's based on this large number of 2912 annual hours, which is essentially 8 discretionary hours per day. Then when it comes to the use of vehicles, the private vehicle is used for 15,000 miles per year, while the delivery van is used for 20,500 a year. The delivery charges were based in 2020 Uber Eats charges. That was the only solid available information at that time. Now several grocery stores have options, etc. So if we were to redo the study, we could be using the Safeway, Raley's, and others charge things. So this study can be upgraded and updated as required. But here we're trying to answer the basic question: is this even worth it? Can it be even doable? Now, if you are a rural resident, you can realize perhaps savings if you order the vehicles that they're if you order deliveries that they're coming to you via automated or other form. But it's not normal to assume that all the deliveries will be happening. So bottom line, we had 4 scenarios of the degree of substitution. The present time, of course, is that there is no automated delivery in rural areas or any delivery of any sort. So right now we have 0% delivery. Then in the future, if these are quite available, the residents would decide to substitute only 1/4 of their trips, or half of their trips, or even all of them. So because of these scenarios, then we have an ability to estimate their level of savings, whether they're going to be high or low. So then let's talk a little bit about the case study. The case study, again, had 2 separate areas. One was the village of Sprague, very close to the town of Spokane in Washington. This is a long distance application with a round trip between Sprague and Spokane of about 80 miles. The population in 2020 was close to 500 people, and the median income was, as you see, about 31,000. Same thing for Volcano Village, where the town that is located nearby was Hilo, which is a moderate distance of about 50 miles round trip. Population is about 2,500, but you notice that we selected 2 villages that they have the distances we wanted, but also same income. So then the calculation of the value of time is not different, because we didn't want that to be a variable. Really, we want to account for it, but we didn't want it to be different between the cities, because that's not what the focus of our analysis. Now, coming down to the bottom line, what is that we're trying to do? We want to assess the question, is the rural delivery going to work? So what's the principle? When can we say that is this going to work? First, the customer must realize savings. So we estimated that, and I'll show you that. And then the provider, at a minimum, can break even. We were not really looking for a profit, because let's say the provider is an established big box store, your Targets, your Walmarts, etc., your Costco's. So they already make a profit by selling the goods. So the delivery could be done at cost. In other words, break even. Good. So then the parts of the analysis is estimating the customer's cost per shopping trip, and then depending on the delivery version, what they may be able to save over a year. For the delivery provider, what is their cost? and how many deliveries do they need to do at the set delivery fee in order to break even. So then if we put this all together, the question is, do we come up with a reasonable number? Clearly, we don't have any horse in the race, so we're curious to see what is the break-even point. Is the break-even point 3 or 30? Obviously, if it's 3, you only need to do 3 deliveries to break even. Well, that's promising. If you need to do 30 deliveries using a small van, then clearly we're having a problem with the costs. So again, it's all an approximation to see how feasible the whole thing is. So here is some of the details of the analysis. We don't have the time to go through all this. For anybody who is interested, the last slide will be my email. It's pdp@hawaii.edu. The study is actually published already by CSET, and it's available on the web as we speak. So all these details are in the printed report. So when it comes then to the cost per shopping trip, we need to account for the value of time, which again, between Washington and Hawaii, it came to $7 per trip versus $6 per trip. Again, all the numbers are identical except people in Washington, they have to deal with 80 miles of travel, in Hawaii with 50 miles of travel, and with the prevailing speeds, they need to spend more time on the road. Therefore, their trip is a little more expensive. So all the rest was equal. Again, this is the value of time calculation. The operating cost per mile is your gasoline and everything, the maintenance and repairs, the tires, the brake jobs you need to do over time to have the vehicle working. And again, the comparisons are for the 2015 Camry, the F-150 truck, and the electric vehicle, the Nissan Leaf. These are all customer vehicles. Again, separately for Washington and Hawaii for each vehicle. And then you can see the cost per mile to run this vehicle. But then, as you know, and we talked about it earlier, there is also fixed cost, regardless of using your vehicle or not. You already have paid the insurance. You have paid the taxes and registrations, and of course you're suffering the depreciation because every year your vehicle is getting 1 year older. And here again these are the estimates per day for these customer vehicles. And then the bottom line then is what is the total cost per trip for each type of vehicle. And of course you would expect the more, so to speak, gasoline pickup truck that comes up with the highest number of trips, the highest number of cost, and the Nissan Leaf, the electric vehicle, comes with the lowest numbers, with the Camry somewhere in the between. Again, now with 2022 numbers and fuel prices doubled, these numbers for gasoline vehicles will be substantially higher. So essentially, as time goes by, this concept of automated delivery is more feasible, essentially because the costs are higher. Unfortunately, automated delivery vehicles are not ready for showtime yet. So then, unfortunately, I cannot project this because of a minor technical glitch. Again, it's in the written report. This is the annual savings for the customer. This is the rural customer. And again, there are 4 tables because these are the 4 levels of substitution. Whether they substitute 0% of the trips, 25% of the trips, etc. And depending on what vehicle they had. Typically then you would expect to reach the bottom line that the biggest savings is that if I am a rural customer and I have a pickup truck and I substitute for deliveries 100% of the time. In this case, in Washington, at Sprague, I will save over $1,000. In Volcano Village, I will save $719 per year. These are actually substantial savings for a household. So it's the numbers are turning out to be essentially positive in several scenarios. On the other hand, if you want to substitute only 25% of the trips, and you already drive an electric vehicle, which is very rare in a rural community, well, you're going to save somewhere between $40 and $30, whether you're in Washington or Hawaii. These are not really deal breakers, and people will not likely be switching at this low level of savings. There's a big difference between $1,000 and $41, clearly. So depending on the actual scenario, the customer base will vary, and typically people with inefficient vehicles and longer distances will be saving the most, and of course the ones that they substitute the most shopping trips. So finally, then let's go address the delivery situation. Again, this is the same vehicle in gasoline and in electric configuration. So here are the operating costs for fuel maintenance and everything else that is involved with electric vehicles. In addition, in the next slide, we'll be adding the driver cost. So the cost per mile and the cost per day are over here. Clearly, the Nissan working as a cab vehicle, because of the startup price, it has a pretty high cost per day. Very low cost per mile, because you only need the electric fuel and very little else. You don't have to pay drivers, etc. And here is the break-even point analysis, where basically you have your costs and you have your revenue. That's the yellow line ascending. This is for Washington state application, and this is for the Hawaii application. They look quite similar. The key here is that the number of deliveries that they are minimally essential to break even are, depending on the type of vehicle, is 6 for the gasoline vehicle with a driver, 5 with electric vehicle with a driver, and 4 for the connected automated vehicle. So the number of deliveries actually required to break even in both cases is 4, and it is considered a fairly low number, which is quite possible. So the result essentially that we're coming up to is that this is promising. Definitely, this is not a full analysis of all the costs and all the, and of course, there is no market analysis coming with it if there is actually interest in folks doing this. But in theory, if you could have 4 deliveries done in one shot, then you could break even for the day, which is a very encouraging number. And of course, it works very much in favor of the connected autonomous vehicle because it's the least number of required deliveries. So it's the most affordable way to do it. As you see here, we show profit and then we said break even. Well, this happens because we need to select an integer number, right, of deliveries. We cannot have a number like 5.6 over here. So because of that, you wind up to selecting a number of deliveries that gives you something positive on this line. It cannot be negative because you didn't break even. So you need a minimum of 6 deliveries in order to have a positive number over here. And with that in mind, then we can begin to conclude. So our objective was to investigate whether delivery of goods in rural areas with an automated vehicle is feasible. Because as we said, from a social perspective, it can help the elderly and disabled people who are in larger numbers in rural areas. It has the potential to reduce the disproportionately high number of fatal crashes. As you notice, we didn't address this in the study because this is nothing that I, as a customer, can experience. Nobody's going to pay me $10 extra because my risk was reduced. And the same thing for the delivery service. The only thing that we see here is very important at the society level. Therefore, if quite a lot of vehicles of this substitute substantial number of trips, some of the risk and the number of crashes may drop. The outcome of that is that actually then government may want to subsidize these deliveries because indeed they reduce the crash risk on rural roads. The numbers did show that such a delivery will reduce the household transportation cost. So there will be real savings for households, which can be high in some cases and low in other cases, depending on what vehicle they drive, how frequently they travel for groceries and how much they substitute with automated delivery. And of course, they will gain time spent for shopping. Clearly, again, where most people are not going to substitute 100% of their trips because they go to the big town for a lot of other purposes, such as, seeing the doctor, going to get a loan in the bank and, get some entertainment or other, attend an athletic event, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly not 100% of the trips will ever be substituted, but a number of trips will be substituted. And of course, a more detailed analysis, marketing analysis needs to establish that number. The numbers indicate that because of the number of deliveries is low, the service seems to be viable. Particularly, it was viable with fuel prices of 2020. If we put fuel prices of 2022, the numbers will actually be reduced, and possibly the number of deliveries needed to break even under 2022 conditions would be only 3. The last point that I wanted to make is that actually our analysis is myopic in the sense that it looked only one pair, let's say between Hilo and Volcano Village. But then if Hilo is here and Volcano Village is here, I only did one of those with deliveries in the area of Volcano Village. But there are several other villages around Hilo, right? So therefore, if I am the big box here retailer, I can use these vehicles to cover a lot of other surrounding rural areas. Therefore, one should do a comprehensive business plan and analysis for specific areas, and will likely come up with a much better number still for a viable service over time, because there will be a lot more locations and a lot more customers that these vehicles can serve, and not a single origin destination pair. So with that, the basic analysis shows that this is a promising concept. And if you have any more questions, be free to send me an email at pdp@hawaii.edu, or go to the CSET website at the University of Alaska Fairbanks to actually download the report, which has all the details, and then feel free to contact me if you have additional questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Panos. That was lovely. This recording will be made available through the Arctic Infrastructure and Development Center YouTube channel under the CSET webinar playlist. Is there anybody have any questions? All right, with no questions, I will stop the recording, and thank you again, Panos, for a lovely presentation.
Thank you, Vicky.